Let's talk about BDOs. In, I think it was version 16, they created something called a business data object. Do any of you use BDOs for anything? Well, I didn't either. So I called Ron Heisinga and I said, Ron, what are these little pink things called BDOs? And he says, they're business data objects. And I said, what are they and what do you use them for? And he said, they're ways of creating containers around entities, and Bob, you can use them for whatever you like. Thanks, Ron. So for a long time, I did what you guys did, is I just ignored them. And then I found a handy, useful purpose for them, and hence this segment of the discussion, okay? Let me give you just some background on BDOs. They are another type of modeling object, and I'll show you an example of one in just a second. BDOs have a unique name, just like entities do. They have a definition field where you can fill in a narrative definition and a notes field, just like entities do. What they don't have is the capacity to assign relationships to them, like an entity does. Instead, what they have is the ability to contain logical entities. So think of them as like a little wrapper that you can put around a set of entities that says, I want to deal with these things as a cluster and I want to give it a name and a definition. Mechanically, that's what BDOs are. And you might say, well, isn't that what submodels are? You know, why do I need another type of container? The big difference is, first of all, with BDOs, the containment is one-to-many. So if an entity is contained in one BDO, it can't be in another BDO. It's one-to-many. Whereas with submodels, it could be many-to-many. Submodel could contain many entities, and an entity could be contained in many submodels. That's not a conflict. So that's one structural difference. The other thing about BDOs is it's actually a graphic object that I can display like an ER diagram. I can't create a diagram of all my submodels, right? Over on the side of the road in the Explorer page, but it's not a graphical object like a BDO is, okay? So that's background information for you. What are BDOs? How do we use them? Well, here's what I use them for. We've had some discussion today about conceptual data models and logical data models and physical data models. I'll give you the Bob Conway definition, and that might not be the Len Silverstein definition or the Steve Hoberman definition. They may agree or disagree with me on, but here's my perception of what a conceptual model is. The distinction between logical and physical, that one's pretty straightforward. A physical model is a model of a physical database. A logical model is a model of the real world, okay? A physical database table called customer, I could ask, you know, how many rows and columns does it have? A logical entity called a customer doesn't have rows and columns. It's a guy that walks into a store and wants to buy a product from me. That's what a logical customer is, okay? So it's a real world representation. So too is the conceptual model. It is a real world representation, and it has two distinctions from the logical model. The first is in terms of the level of detail, okay? Logical models tend to be attributed and highly normalized, ready to get forward and engineered into a physical database. A conceptual model, in my mind, doesn't need to be in third normal form. It can have many, many relationships. It's a much coarser granularity than I look for in a logical model. Its intent is to be comprehensive across the entire enterprise, okay? And you hear people talk about conceptual models. You know, the expression they use is, it's a mile wide and an inch deep. I need a lot of coverage. I need to cover all functions and departments, but I don't need to go down to excruciating detail. The expression that I've heard is that a conceptual model ought to be able to fit on a single page. I've never been able to do that, not without a microscope to read it. But probably it ought to have dozens or maybe 100 entities, as opposed to an enterprise logical model that may have thousands of entities by the time it's done. And the reason is I use them for different purposes. The conceptual model, in my mind, is a planning and scoping document.